Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The U.S. Senate has voted to pass the Department of Defense budget bill for fiscal year 2026, which included the repeal of the Caesars Act imposed on Syria since 2019. The bill won the support of 77 senators as Syria's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Assad Hassan al-Shaibani thanked the U.S. Senate. The World Bank and Syria's Ministry of Agriculture has begun discussions on a support program aimed at addressing key priorities in the country's agriculture sector. They met via video conference, including Isabel Liu, the bank's agriculture sector lead for Syria and Lebanon. British police said a court hearing for Britain's Duke of Marlborough, Charles James Spencer Churchill, is charged with 3 counts of international strangulation, was adjourned. However, a new hearing date has yet to be set. The United States approved a record $11.1 billion arms package for Taiwan, including HIMARS rocket systems. This comes as Taipei plans an additional $40 billion in defense spending, which could further strain U.S.-China relations. The rebel movement M23 has announced its exit from the strategically important city of Uvira in eastern DRC. This reportedly comes at a request of American mediators in the conflict between the M23 and the armed forces of DRC. Russian prosecutors said a British man who Moscow says fought for Ukraine against the Russian army has been sentenced to 13 years in a maximum security prison camp after being convicted of being a paid mercenary, while Russia's prosecutor general said he had been tried by a court in a part of Russian-controlled Donetsk for now. President Donald Trump delivered a speech from the White House highlighting his achievements and setting out parts of his agenda for the year ahead. He blames former President Joe Biden for immigration and inflation problems, as polls show public frustration with the economy, while Trump argues his record deserves greater support. European leaders are locked in intense talks over how to finance continued support for Ukraine, with Belgium emerging as a key holdout amid concerns over financial and legal risks. Now we start this hour with Russia. Russia has warned the United States against taking what it calls a dangerous course on Venezuela. Moscow's foreign ministry said it hopes the Trump administration will not make a fatal mistake, while the Kremlin says it is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela, calling it potentially dangerous and urging all countries to exercise restraint. Moscow has emphasized that Venezuela remains a key ally and partner of Russia. The warning comes as Washington steps up pressure on Venezuela, raising concerns about international navigation and regional stability. Russia said any U.S. move could have unpredictable consequences for the entire Western Hemisphere. The Kremlin added it expects President Donald Trump's administration to act with what it called a rational and pragmatic approach, as tensions over Venezuela continue to build. This comes as the U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he will not let anyone who should not be going through the Venezuela blockade go through. This comes a day after Trump ordered a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers sailing into or out of Venezuelan waters. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has also stated that his country will continue its oil trade. China has also voiced strong diplomatic support for Venezuela following a total and complete naval blockade of sanctioned oil tankers ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump, while Beijing has also condemned the move as unilateral. Let's listen into what Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson has shared.
中方反对一切单边霸凌行径，支持各国捍卫自身主权和民族尊严。委内瑞拉有权利自主发展同其他国家的互利合作，相信国际社会理解和支持 委内瑞拉维护自身正当权益的立场。中方支持委方关于召开联合国安理会紧急会议的要求。
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ben Aris. He's a former Moscow bureau chief of the Daily Telegraph, joins us live from Berlin. Thank you very much, Mr. Ben Aris, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, Mr. Aris, looking at this, what does this timing suggest of, both China and Russia's warning towards U.S. and what are the relationship like of China and Russia with Venezuela?
Well, it's part of the larger fight. I mean, what we're facing at the moment is really a historical change in the makeup of the world. And the West has dominated for 500 years, and in the last 100 years post Second World War, it's been pushing this like rules-based values international order. And that's breaking up because as far as the Chinese and the Russian are concerned, that this has been a unipolar world, which is to say that America is running the world and telling everyone else what to do. And now that both those countries, in fact, all of the global emerging markets are now rising rapidly and have done a lot of catch up. These other countries, China, Russia in particular, are saying that we want to see at the table, and it shouldn't be a unipolar world with the states in charge. It should be a multipolar world where all of the leading countries, share responsibility and organize international relations on the basis of cooperation, diplomacy, and negotiation. So Venezuela is case in point, in so much as the States is bullying Venezuela, it's interfering with its domestic politics, and moreover, it seems very clear that Trump intends to grab Venezuela's oil reserves. These are the largest in the world, although it remains a relatively small player in the trade because it hasn't been able to develop them. And this is, the unipolar world in action. This is the states telling another little country what it should do, telling it can't have the president that it elected, for all Maduro's faults, and at the same time, just literally imperialistically grabbing its most valuable asset. Trump wants to put American companies in there to develop that and make profits for America when it's a Venezuelan asset. And so naturally, because China and Russia are championing this unipolar world, and they're trying to build a multipolar world. They're trying to build an international coalition of other emerging markets who are not participating in all the multinational organizations like the IMF and World Bank. They want to try and band together, and so it's natural that they support Venezuela, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, there's a pushback, a clash going on here, in order to represent to the other emerging markets in the world, look, we are the honest brokers, we're your friend, we respect your domestic decisions to run the country how you like, and America doesn't. And that message is going across very loud and clear to everybody else, and the Americans are ignoring
it. So U.S. do you think U.S. Congress should have more authority under War Powers Act or similar mechanisms over decisions that could lead to military conflict in Venezuela, given domestic and international legal and ethical implications?
Well, I'm not an expert on the states, but as I understand it, that the president doesn't have the power to declare war unilaterally. There has to be an act of Congress, and this is one of the curbs on him. Trump has been famously ignoring the rules repeatedly and using executive orders, decrees, in effect, to do things that he wants, and the legal system is sort of scrambling to catch up because he does so many illegal things that they haven't been shot down in court. I'm not sure to what extent he can. Well, I mean, he can order a special military operation. I mean, it's a repeat of what Putin's doing. Putin also didn't declare war on Ukraine for legal reasons, because there's no reason. He's allowed to do a special military operation for security reasons without having to put it to a vote. And I think Trump's playing the same sort of card here, is that he can use executive orders in order to fight narco-terrorism. And under terrorism laws, then he does have some power to move the military around. So I think what he's doing now is trying to formalize it a bit and put it in front of Congress, because then he can declare war, which is another kettle of fish.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. With that thing, I would like to thank Mr. Aris for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving to Ukraine and Russia, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukrainian and U.S. delegations will hold new talks on the 19th and the 20th of December in the United States aimed at ending the Russia and Ukraine's war. Zelensky has told the media that the Ukrainian team is already on its way to the United States. Zelensky has reiterated Russia's position on Donbass, stating that it wants to seize the whole region. He has repeatedly said that Ukraine is not prepared to give up its territory. Meanwhile, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen has said that summit talks from today in Brussels on the topic of frozen Russian assets will continue as long as necessary to reach a deal on financing Ukraine for the next 2 years. She has emphasized that leaders will not leave the summit until a solution is reached. Latvia's Prime Minister Evika Silina has added that it is crucial to show decisiveness regarding support for Ukraine, as EU leaders gather for negotiations on using frozen Russian assets to aid Kyiv. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has expressed his confidence in finding a common solution to fund Ukraine using Russian frozen assets. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has also said that there was a way forward to come to an agreement on the use of Russian assets. Let's listen in. We will be skipping the bite here, but we'll welcome back Mr. Ben Aris. He's a former Moscow bureau chief of the Daily Telegraph, joins us live from Berlin. Thank you very much, Mr. Aris, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what do you think? How aligned are European leaders in terms of using the Russian assets, and what warnings have been given by the people, by the countries who disagree with using Russian assets, including Russia?
They're not. They're not aligned at all. Quite the opposite. They're deeply divided into two camps. I mean, today, just now, it's just starting right now. The reparations loan debate in the Europe Council. All the top leaders are there, and you've got one camp led by Hungary, but not only that, and that are adamantly against doing these loans because all they're designed to do is to prolong the war for another 2 years. And then you've got another camp led by Germany that are for taking the Russian frozen assets and turning them into this reparations loan, because exactly that, they will fund the war for another 2 years. And the irony of this is that, Merz just said in a statement, like, we're going to take this money in order to fund the war because that's the fastest way of bringing the war to an end, which is totally illogical. And on the other side, you've got the Americans, led by the Trump peace plan, which is actively going ahead and has made a lot of progress, stuck on the two issues, as we talked about before, of security guarantees and who owns what territory. But then that Trump is pushing for that deal to end the war by Christmas, next week. And so you also now got a clash between the States and Europe, because Europe seems to be warmongering and wanting the war to prolong the war, and the States are trying to stop it. And so now you've got the States putting pressure on European actors who are going into this meeting. So that just foments even more tension within the vote that's going to happen over the next 2 days, because some people are being pressured by the States not to vote no, to stop this loan going through. Specifically, Italy has already been bullied into joining the no camp. And they're being lobbied at the same time by the executive, by von der Leyen, Kallas, Merz, to vote yes. And I think as you mentioned, that the Zelensky team are going to the States on the 19th and the 20th is very key, because what they're watching very carefully is if this decision goes through. If it does go through, they've got enough money, $210 billion, to continue to fight for 2 years at least.
Yes.
If it doesn't go through, they've got no money, and Ukraine will be defeated. So the results of the next 2 days is what they're going to talk about in Washington. And then they have to decide. I mean, if there's no money, I think Zelensky has to capitulate. And if there is money, then he's going to be asking for more American military support.
Yes, 100%. We will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Ben Aris for joining us as a former Moscow bureau chief of the Daily Telegraph from Berlin. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Asia. China has urged the United States to immediately stop arming Taiwan, as this comes after Taiwan has said that the United States has approved the sale of $11.1 billion weapons to the island. China has accused U.S. for the violation of One China principle. Meanwhile, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Go Jiakun has responded. Let's listen into what he has shared.
美方公然宣布巨额售台先进武器计划，严重违反一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报，严重损害中国主权、安全和领土完整，严重破坏台海和平稳定，向台独分裂势力发出严重错误信号。中方对此坚决反对。 强烈谴责，中方敦促美方恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报，落实美国领导人所作严肃承诺，立即停止武装台湾的危险行径。中方将采取坚决有力措施，捍卫国家主权、安全和领土。
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much, Mr. Feingold, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what's the significance of this, continuous approval by U.S. of selling arms or arming Taiwan again and again?
It's a long-standing policy of the United States to make weapons available to Taiwan for many, many decades. That has not changed despite the ups and downs of U.S.-China relations. And President Trump throughout this year has said positive things about Xi Jinping personally and about their relationship, and he sought a trade deal. That being said, it does not change the U.S. policy to make defensive weapons available to Taiwan. So this sale was certainly expected. And in addition, the United States, for a number of years already, going back to the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, now the second Trump administration, has made it very clear to Taiwan that the U.S. expected Taiwan to significantly invest more in its own defense. And Taiwan is trying to do that by making available the budgets to buy these weapons. At least the president has proposed it to Taiwan's legislature. The budget is yet to be approved. But the United States has wanted Taiwan to invest more in its defense. So the United States is basically sticking to its previous policies and with its own wording that it has used with its interactions with Taiwan.
Right. And how might now, we saw China's demand that the United States stop arming Taiwan. Do you think it will change anything?
Absolutely not. Again, the United States has been selling Taiwan weapons from throughout the last 60 plus years. So that policy is not going to change. There's absolutely no indications of that. And there's a significant factor here that has to be mentioned, which is that Taiwan is under threat of an invasion by China. China has not renounced the use of force to bring about unification with Taiwan. And as long as that threat exists, then Taiwan is going to invest in its own defense, whether that's building weapons domestically or purchasing them from overseas. The challenge for Taiwan is, at the moment, generally, it's only the United States that's willing to sell weapons to Taiwan.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Feingold for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to U.S., billionaire private astronaut Jared Isaacman was confirmed as NASA administrator with a 67-30 Senate vote. Isaacman, who is a supporter of Mars missions and a former associate of SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, will lead the agency's efforts to return humans to the moon and prepare for future Mars exploration. Isaacman's confirmation follows a contentious process, with some Democratic senators raising concerns about his ties to Musk, whose company holds significant NASA contracts. Despite this, Isaacman secured bipartisan support, with 16 Democrats joining Republicans in backing his nomination. As NASA's new leader, Isaacman faces budget cuts and workforce reductions Under the Trump administration's efficiency push, he aims to accelerate NASA's lunar and Mars missions, leveraging private companies like SpaceX to reduce costs. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much, Mr. Ross, for staying with us. Now, could there be any friction of interest between Jared Isaacman's confirmation as NASA and his close ties with Elon Musk?
It's possible, but we don't have any reason to believe that Isaacman will engage in any wrongdoing. He has a good reputation, and he seems qualified for the post. And although a number of Democrats did not vote for him, it could be because of the concern about conflicts. It could be simply because they don't like to approve President Trump's nominees. But many Democrats did vote for him, and I think that reflects a consensus view among U.S. members of Congress, the foreign policy community, the scientific community, that it is important for the U.S. to continue to invest in its space programs, and that it was important to get a leader in there in NASA. It wasn't a good idea for it to be leaderless for this many months and to have an acting leader who was the Secretary of Transportation. So there generally is a lot of support, and although there's some pressure and some arguments about the amount of money that the Trump administration is willing to make available, again, I think Congress is eager to make a lot of money available to NASA.
Right, and what do you think, what does this Isaacman's nomination suggest now about congressional priorities for NASA's future, and how could these budget cuts and workforce reductions affect plans to accelerate lunar and Mars missions?
Again, I would expect Congress to put back some money that maybe the Trump administration had requested to be removed. We often see that with the military, where the White House might make a budget proposal that doesn't include certain programs or a reduction in certain programs, and then Congress adds in more money than the White House requested. In fact, we saw that with the National Defense Authorization Act that just passed Congress within recent days. So it's very possible that NASA will put in more money than the White House had added. And even as Secretary Duffy, in his post on X to congratulate Isaacman after his nomination was approved, he mentioned that it's important to beat China in the space race, and that really is compelling for a lot of members of Congress, regardless of which party they are.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And with that, I would like to thank Mr. Ross Feingold for joining us today from Taipei and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Pope Leo is expected to accept the resignation of New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan as early as Thursday today, with an announcement on his successor also anticipated. Catholic media reports suggest Bishop Ron Hicks of Joliet, Illinois, is the leading candidate to take over the Archdiocese of New York. Hicks, 58, is from the same state as the newly elected Pope and would assume one of the most prominent roles in the American Catholic Church. Cardinal Dolan has confirmed earlier this year that he submitted his resignation after turning 75, in line with Vatican rules. While such resignations are mandatory, cardinals often remain in office until a successor is appointed. Dolan has led the Archdiocese of New York since 2009. The transition comes as the Archdiocese seeks hundreds of millions of dollars to resolve clergy sexual abuse claims, with several churches selling properties or filing for bankruptcy to raise funds. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around